So what do you do when your marriage is in such a good place and you're just blissfully happy? Inappropriately, this is if you're Prince Harry, inappropriately lunge for a hug with another woman who has a boyfriend and was completely shocked by this right next to your said wife, who I presume was looking away.
They live in their own world, in their own bubble, and Meghan has her truth. There are so many issues going on here.
Harry's awkward smile really said it all. It's like he's looking very unhappy. Look at that. And then he realizes, oh gosh, she is recording me again. I better smile.
Friday night in Victoria, British Columbia, the purple carpet was already buzzing. This was billed as the last major gala a very famous songwriter would ever host, with about $14.5 million in the room. And there she was on the carpet, arm out, directing the evening's host on where to stand at his own event on the final night he would reportedly do this.
Harry and Meghan, I think at this point, are having so many problems behind the scenes, Dan, that this is why you see all this chaos on the front end here in the media, because there's so much happening that we don't see. And this is why it looks chaotic. Does it make sense?
He walks right past her outstretched hand, as if it is not even there. Then, about 2 hours later, her husband was seen with both arms around a 31-year-old singer, and online chatter says he allegedly told her he felt every word of it deep in his chest. The next morning, the singer posted a warm thank you message to him, and notably, she did not mention his wife at all.
Weirdly inappropriate, someone who claims to be a member of the British royal family. It's certainly not something you would see most royals do.
You definitely would not, Dan. And it came across as very odd. I feel you in the back of my throat. Maybe that's a British thing. I'm not quite sure what Harry is trying to get across there. Perspective comes across as very odd, going in and lunging for a hug and a cuddle, as she describes it. Again, shows Harry kind of desperately trying to figure out, I think, what this post-royal life means, because they're desperately trying to be royal.
Back in April, when people started saying there was trouble in that marriage, their own representative pushed back and called those claims completely and utterly false. So now, let's go through Friday night, minute by minute, and you can decide what it all adds up to. That is exactly why people kept replaying the footage, because every small move started getting picked apart online. Some viewers said the body language looked awkward, others thought it was just a tense moment at a high-profile event, but either way, the reaction spread fast. And once the spotlight shifted to the husband and the singer, the conversation only got louder. Social media users began comparing the timing, the expressions, and even the silence afterward, trying to read meaning into every detail. Nothing was officially raised about from the event itself, but that did not stop the speculation from building. So the question turned from what happened on the carpet to what people believed it said about the bigger picture, and that is where the discussion really started to get messy.
As Princess Carparkle put it, Meghan Markle directing David Foster and Catherine McPhee at his own gala, then cackling away. She loves the attention from the camera and red carpet. She does that whole over-emoting, that crazy husband of mine laugh. It's too much and phony AF. Han said how cute Meghan was spotted doing her favourite thing, directing people where to stand on the red carpet at David Foster's Foundation's event. And Meghan's mole went further, posting, when a picture tells the real story, stand Meghan and Harry.
Nobody forced them to be there. This was not an obligation, not some scheduled role, and nobody had called from a palace to send them over. According to online discussion, they showed up unannounced at someone else's 40th anniversary charity night, then walked onto the carpet after every paying guest was already seated, and the moment she stepped onto it, some viewers said she started directing the scene. Left arm up, out, across, then down. She was seen by some observers showing a man old enough to be her father where to place his feet, almost like she was running the layout herself. Right beside him was his wife, a woman who has earned recognition in her own right, also being positioned in the moment, and then came that laugh. The kind people online instantly began replaying and reading into.
Meghan was completely blanked by David Foster when she reached out her hand at the photo call. We also had the usual creepy body language of Meghan telling people where to stand and how to pose for photographs. So Harry and Meghan were at this event because they've got nothing else to do. They've got no jobs or anything. There's no money coming in, sadly. I say that with no pleasure at all. They are in big financial trouble. And that's one of the reasons why the marriage is crumbling.
She throws her head back and gives that open-mouthed, camera-ready laugh, the kind some people online said looked made for the lenses only. On his own carpet, the whole moment had a bold feel to it. He does not follow the direction, though, not with a glance, not with a nod, nothing at all. He moves around that outstretched arm and finds his own place, while someone else has to step into the frame and tidy up the incident for her. After that, she looks down for a beat, then clasps both hands behind her back.
As Nancy Sidley reminded us, before this moment even happened, Meghan had to stop walking, tell her assistant to pull out her phone and start recording. That's why Harry is so far ahead of her. Imagine living your life having to set up and record every moment just to feel validated, including your engagement.
Inside, the moment seems to carry on with the same energy. A live auction is underway, with real money going to a real charity, and she appears more focused on filming herself through it than on participating in the bidding. In the footage, she is seen telling the room she now has $50,000, using that playful voice right into her own phone. Piper players are moving through the space as well. Before they reach her, she stops walking and has her assistant bring out the phone to start recording, which is why her husband ends up about 20 feet ahead of her in every frame from that corridor. That is why the clip kept traveling, because it was no longer just about one awkward stretch in the room. It had become a full internet conversation about image, timing, and who seemed in control. Some viewers read the whole sequence as confidence, while others thought it looked like a public moment that never quite landed the way it was meant to. And once people started freezing the video frame by frame, every glance and pause got treated like a clue, even though none of it has been officially explained. What makes it stick is how quickly a small scene can turn into a bigger narrative online. The charity setting, the polished cameras, and the uneasy energy all gave people something to dissect, and that kind of attention does not fade easily. Instead, it keeps building, especially when viewers feel there is more beneath the surface than what was actually shown on the carpet.
Their star is definitely on the decline in the entertainment industry. Things are just not moving and shaking as they used to be. And the couple, I think, is definitely feeling the stress of that, particularly Meghan, who has, I think, dreamed for years and years of being this mover and shaker in the entertainment industry, and has been kind of shocked to see herself fall from grace so incredibly hard. I think it's been quite difficult for her to try to figure this out. And of course, the main culprit is the lack of talent for the both of them.
Then the very famous singer takes the stage, and she is suddenly up dancing and calling out, with one person there describing it as a full-on moment. Her arms are moving, she seems determined to make sure the whole room notices her, and the energy gets even louder in the space. Meanwhile, her husband stays seated through it all. Just look at his face during that stretch. He does that thing people online say he has been doing for about 4 years now, where the smile shows up maybe a second and a half after it is actually needed. Flat, then on, then flat again. The moment he seemed to think nobody was aiming a camera his way. Someone watching from home said he looked unhappy, then noticed she was recording him again, so he quickly put on a smile. That is the night she chose, according to online chatter. That is the night she allegedly planned. On a carpet she was running herself. But that version of events was described online as completely false.
And there's just so much going on. I think Harry is in a position now. He has to. I know I always go back, but I don't understand why we can't see that the problem is Meghan and what she is doing to Harry.
The hubby lunging at Sydnie Christmas. There was no Sydnie Christmas reference whatsoever on Meghan Markle's Instagram, and that doesn't surprise me because it was highly inappropriate, I thought, of Prince Harry.
Now the singer, a 31-year-old from Britain who won a talent show a couple of years ago, is 10 years younger than him. She performs Tomorrow, then follows it with My Way. Before she starts, she makes a light joke about the king, saying, "Sorry he could not come, he sent me instead." He laughs at that like he has not laughed at much in a long time. When she steps off the stage, he walks toward her with both arms open, and then tells her he felt every word of it right in the back of his throat. And that is exactly why people kept replaying it, because the reaction was never really just about one smile or one awkward pause. Online, viewers started connecting the dots between the carpet tension, the stage energy, and the way every small gesture seemed to carry extra meaning. Some people felt the whole night looked carefully managed, while others said the internet was reading too much into moments that may have been completely ordinary. Still, once a clip starts moving like that, the commentary takes on a life of its own. The scene stops being a simple gala exchange and turns into a bigger conversation about image, timing, and how public figures are judged in real time. That is why even the smallest details kept getting picked apart, because to a lot of viewers, this was less about the performance itself and more about what they thought it might suggest underneath the surface. And from there, the discussion only grew louder, with people treating every expression as part of a larger story, even though none of it has been officially confirmed.
Prince Harry has given his royal seal of approval to 2024 Britain's Got Talent winner Sydnie Christmas. He told Sid, quote, he felt every word in the back of his throat after she performed Tomorrow from Anne and Frank Sinatra's My Way in front of him at David Foster's charity gala in Canada over the weekend.
I have gone over that sentence around 9 times, and I still cannot quite figure out what he may have thought he was saying to a woman he had met about 90 seconds earlier, with his wife standing on the same floor. Her own version of it may be the funniest part of this whole situation, and she is not being flashy about it, bless her. What she wrote was that this is where it gets strange, and that he simply went in for a hug, while she thought, well, why not? Why not? She is keeping it polite about a married man. Then comes the next morning, and this is the detail nobody else seems to have really clocked. She posts her thank you, calls it a pinch me moment, and says he is the loveliest soul she has ever come across.
Speaking from Canada, Sid told me, when I was on stage, I joked about meeting his dad before adding, sorry he couldn't make it, he sent me instead. Oh my God, I say such silly things when I'm nervous, but Harry started laughing. Here's where it gets weird. Got down off stage, he just came forward and gave me a big, and he went, Sydnie, I felt every word, I really felt that. Revealing how the fifth in line to the throne ditched royal protocol, Sydnie continued, he just went in for the hug. And I was like, why not?
And then she tags the account at Sussex Royal, even though, according to online discussion, nobody has posted on that handle in 6 years. Now online, people joked that it is basically a frozen account with a blue check mark, and they said they could not believe that was the place she chose to send her thanks. According to the chatter, not a single person from that circle stepped in to correct it. Meghan is not mentioned in it either. She is not tagged, her name does not appear anywhere in the post, and she is not thanked, not once, not even in passing.
Meghan was completely left out of the singer's post, with the inactive Sussex Royal tagged in her place rather than any of Meghan's own accounts. So this extremely experienced has deliberately snubbed Meghan and sent out a clear message, which is, get out of the way, sister. Get out of the way, because I am coming for your man.
Now, before anyone rushes in to say the woman was simply being careless, look at what was happening on the other side of it. Meghan posted plenty that weekend. The auction, yes. Piper's account had a video, and there were posts about the dress, the flowers, and the rest of it. But not one word about the singer. So you had 2 women at the same event, posting around each other for 48 hours, almost like a pair of divorced neighbors, pretending not to notice one another across the fence. People online found that pretty funny, and also pretty strange. Totally and utterly false. That is why the reaction kept stretching beyond the event itself. Once people on social media started comparing those posts, the whole thing became less about a single thank you message and more about timing, distance, and the little gaps people love to fill in for themselves. Some viewers saw it as harmless chaos, while others treated it like a sign that everyone involved was carefully keeping their own lane. And because nothing about it was openly addressed in a clear way, the discussion only got more tangled. One side of the internet focused on the missing mention, another side pointed to the posts that did exist, and then the debate drifted into all kinds of theories that were never officially confirmed. That is usually how these moments go. One small detail gets noticed, then the online commentary starts building a story around it, whether the people at the center intended that or not.
There was a very telling moment, which makes it quite clear things are not good in this marriage.
Your kids and Meghan must be so proud of you. Do they tell you every day?
They tell me every day that they're proud of me.
She's not proud of you, she's using you, but she's not proud of you. It's almost so tragic that he can't see it. But then he has obviously made a decision to not acknowledge anything, to not try and apologize, to not try and win back public support.
Right? And this is where it stops feeling like just one odd evening. If you go back about 4 weeks to July 10th at the National Exhibition Center in Birmingham, the picture starts to shift. It was 1 year out from the next Invictus Games, and he was on morning television while half the country was apparently having toast. Meghan had been expected to be there, but she pulled out, with security cited as the reason. So he handled the day alone, and what some viewers thought happened the moment she was not standing beside him is worth noticing. A woman from television came right up to him, he appeared to take hold of her, and the two of them were laughing, swaying, and bouncing around like they had landed at the wrong end of a live wedding reception.
People have seen them together. Oh dear. My goodness, Harry's growing. Is it a backbone? Or, my goodness, maybe he's not going to be able to juggle those balls outside of windows anymore because...
On that Friday morning, he told her she seemed very excitable and said he loved that about her, adding that everybody did. He then, without being prompted, said he was one of her secret admirers and, out of nowhere, mentioned that his children loved watching her on the baking program. Amy, he also gave a speech that morning. He joked that some of them had gotten older and some had lost their hair, which got a genuine laugh from the room. After that, he raced her through a laser course and lost, and he did not seem bothered by losing at all.
Some of us have lost more of our hair. Some of us look younger than we did before. Some of us look older.
For about 90 minutes, he looked like a man enjoying his own life. And the detail that really made people stop and take notice was this. The woman who spent 2 years writing his biography watched that same Friday morning, then by the afternoon she had put it out publicly. Harry always seems much happier when Meghan is not around. That was not being said weeks later with hindsight, it was posted that very same day. And there is a broadcaster who has been making a similar point for months, even while getting mocked for it. Away from her, the weight comes off him, and there is a bit of a sparkle back. Beside her, out it goes. And that is exactly why people kept picking at every little moment. Once a pattern gets mentioned online, even casually, the discussion rarely stays small. Viewers start replaying old clips, comparing public appearances, and reading meaning into body language that may not mean anything at all. Still, when a public figure is already under this kind of spotlight, even a lighthearted exchange can get pulled into a bigger narrative. What made this one stick was not just the laughter or the joking around, it was the contrast people thought they were seeing. To some, it looked like a relaxed version of him that only shows up in certain settings. To others, it was just a normal public appearance that internet users were overanalyzing. But once that split formed, the commentary kept moving, because every new post, every missing mention, and every slight pause seemed to invite another round of speculation. So the story was no longer only about that morning in Birmingham, it had turned into a wider conversation about what people think they notice, what they believe they are seeing, and how quickly online discussion can turn a few public moments into a whole theory.
They didn't laugh. He's in a room with his biggest supporters. They didn't even laugh. I think this is going to be the wake-up moment for Prince Harry, actually. I mean, if anything tells you you've lost the room, it's that. When your biggest supporters are no longer by your side. I mean, he stuck to the speech. I was actually furious by the end of it. I'm not going to play you any more other than this last bit, because he still believes that it's his place to lecture the world.
Put those two Fridays next to each other, Birmingham in July and the purple carpet in August, and the same man keeps showing up with the same open, easy energy. In both moments, his wife is nowhere in the frame, which is exactly why people online started reading so much into it. But calling that a hard conclusion would be way too much, and the claim itself was pushed back on as totally false.
Everyone in that room, other than Alison Hammond, seemed to be against him, were not laughing along. It's, to me, a seminal moment. It's the moment where Harry will have to realise that he's even lost the Invictus Games crowd. They were his loyalists. But am I reading it wrong?
It was quite cringe. You heard nothing when he tried to make that. He's in a position now where he has to address a lot of the ills of his life. How can he even try to move on in this moment that is supposed to be his everything, when there is so much looming around everything, around his security, his wife, his father? He just brings too much negativity with his own life.
Go back to that carpet for a second, and this time, ignore their faces completely. Focus on her left hand. It was like a presenter politely suggesting a window of a few days, and she cut right through it, saying no, months. And the frustrating part, at least for some viewers, is that she may have had the timeline right. Jordan, no ring. A charity dinner in Los Angeles in March, no ring. Geneva in May, no ring. Australia, no ring. At her own film screening at the end of July, the wedding band was there, but the engagement ring was nowhere to be seen. The last time anyone seems to have photographed that ring on that finger was back in February.
But also in the context, Lady C, of this missing engagement ring, which has been off for anywhere from 4 days to 5 months. So I just want to show you what Maureen reported.
Meghan has not been wearing her engagement ring in public for at least 5 days. Now, Yahoo is actually reporting she hasn't been wearing it in public for 4 months. But most news outlets only realized this about 5 days ago, which tells us a lot.
And this was not just some piece of jewelry she simply got tired of wearing. He reportedly helped design it himself. On either side of the center stone, he placed 2 diamonds said to have come from his mother's collection, and in a 2017 interview, he looked genuinely proud of it, 28 years old and fully enjoying the moment. So when viewers pointed to 6 months of a bare finger on a woman who has never once in her life seemed to be photographed by accident, it only added to the speculation. Her interpretation was not that a jeweler had misplaced it. In her view, it had been taken off on purpose, or at the very least, left off on purpose. That is why the conversation kept circling back to the same point, because once people believe a detail matters, every appearance starts to look loaded. A ring on, a ring off, a hand placement, a quick glance. Suddenly, all of it gets treated like evidence by people who are already convinced something bigger is going on. But from a safer, more grounded view, it is still just internet speculation, and no official explanation has been given to settle it one way or the other. Even so, the reaction shows how fast a small visual cue can take over the whole discussion. What began as a simple public moment turned into a debate about timing, symbolism, and what people think they noticed months earlier. And once that happens, the story is no longer only about jewelry or one event. It becomes about how the public fills in the blanks when a familiar face steps back into view.
Maybe she has been, I don't know, I'm only speculating now, but maybe she was quite deliberately keeping off the engagement ring to get the message across that there might be trouble in paradise. I think it's called jerking the man's chain. There's even an expression for it. He's not had his chain jerked to such an extent that he's going to be having Meghan leading him around by the collar yet again. But I think he will be led by the collar by Meghan Markle.
Yes, indeed.
A message sent in the only language that woman has ever seemed fully comfortable with, and on the one night this month, the cameras were aimed straight at those hands. She looked down and then tucked them behind her back. That timing did not go unnoticed. One body language commentator reportedly went over the carpet frame by frame afterward, and what she wrote ended up being one of the sharpest things anyone has said about that marriage all year. Meghan leans into him, places a hand flat on his chest, and gives the cameras that big open, "This is my man" smile. She described that hand as a gesture that suggested possession. Then she turns to him, and the very light way his fingers rest on her back is how she framed it.
I've told you before, and I'm the only journalist in the world with my 2036 Tesla power brain, that Meghan is competing with Harry and always has, because she's pathologically transactional and she competes with everyone, including her own husband. She competes with her father, Thomas Markle. She competed half siblings. She competed with her ex-husband, Trevor Engelson. The minute she got that part in Suits, he helped her with her career. She gets the part in Suits, $50,000 an episode, sends the wedding ring back to him by return of post.
Less reciprocal was the phrase she used, with her mouth closed instead of that old grin, and a hard, flat stare straight into the lens that she compared to a fashion shoot pose. In her read, one of them is actively performing the marriage, while the other is simply standing beside it and getting photographed. She called that interpretation totally and utterly false, making it clear that the claim was, in her view, a dramatic overreach.
She was perfectly happy to do it. The baby that had manage prenatal skills that he was diving from the abdomen to between her knees. That was okay. That could have been dispensed with because there's nothing she can sue me for. And if she tried, she and I and Harry all know that we will end up in a court of law and that they will then have to testify.
One woman was saying all of this before a single frame of that footage had even surfaced, and she was quickly criticized for it. After about 40 years around that family, and after writing the Diana book that many in Fleet Street have quietly drawn from for decades, she went on air in July and said the marriage was in trouble. And that is exactly why the clip kept spreading, because once a public moment is viewed through that kind of lens, every small movement starts getting picked apart online. Some viewers saw a simple pose, while others read it as a sign that the wider story was already being written in plain sight. That gap between what was actually on camera and what people thought it meant is what kept the debate alive. At the same time, the criticism was not just about the footage itself, it was also about the long-running habit of people projecting private tension onto public appearances. Commentators and social media users kept framing it as a bigger question of image, timing, and control, even though no official explanation has been offered. So the moment stayed stuck in the conversation, not because anyone confirmed a hidden meaning, but because the audience was already looking for one.
It's amazing that after 7 years with Harry, Meghan still doesn't know how to behave in the approximation of ladylike behavior.
What came back was not a lawyer's letter. Instead, it was a magazine piece citing someone who would not attach a name to the claim, saying the pair still appeared to be presenting a united front. She read that, and then she sat down in front of a camera and, in her view, did not leave much standing. After 7 years of Duchess life, and after meeting many of the crowned heads across Europe, the commentator was essentially saying she still did not seem to know how to carry herself properly in a room.
She's still that rather greasy little chancer that she always was. So I'm not at all intimidated by her or by him. And all I can say is if they think that they have an action that they can bring against me, bring it on. I'll see them in a court of law.
There was no publicist smoothing it over, no careful clarification, nothing about privacy at a difficult moment. Instead, she seemed to welcome the possibility of a legal dispute on air, and then she pointed to the part people had not fully considered, which was that if it ever got that far, the two of them would be in a witness box, answering questions under oath. Good grief, she appears to be enjoying the attention, and the line she gave months earlier, long before any of this, has aged better than just about anything else people have said about that house.
I am supremely unworried. And as for the idea that evidently is mooted in New Idea as well, and pointing out to her that notwithstanding the fact that you've been a member of the royal family for 7 years, you still can't get over the fact that you behave like trash. You still don't understand, so you behave like trash. Oh, sorry. You behave in such a classy way that everybody despises you.
Her advice to him was that he would have been wise to get out while the situation was still barely manageable. Back then, plenty of people brushed it aside, but if you go back and look at July and August, it is hard to say she was completely off base. The claim that she was totally and utterly wrong just does not hold up, and that is why the conversation did not just fade out after the event ended. Once people online locked onto the idea that the public image was cracking, every new clip and every new remark started getting weighed like evidence, even when nothing had been confirmed. The reaction was less about one moment and more about what viewers thought it revealed about the bigger picture. That is also why the commentary kept circling back to the same point, the gap between polished appearances and what people believe is happening behind them. Critics and online users were not treating it as settled fact, but they were clearly reading a lot into the body language, the timing, and the choice to speak so openly. In that kind of atmosphere, even a small comment can take on a much larger meaning than it probably should. So the story stayed alive because the public was not just watching what happened, they were debating what it might imply, and that debate kept the pressure on.
Meganian and Herodian and stupid, cack-handedly naive as those two rather slick but inefficient operators are, that I was going to perform down to the gutter level that they perform at.
The problem is the foundations, as I see it, the foundations on which they built their brand are crumbling away.
For a long time, it was easy to dismiss all of this as people being unfair, just commentators doing what commentators do, or a little Friday night entertainment at his expense. But then, in July, the same idea surfaced in a very different setting, and that changed the tone. A senior royal reporter at one of the more serious newspapers, a journalist who has followed this couple closely for years, quoted someone who has known him for a long time. That person said, he never really seemed eager to be cut off from his own family. According to that account, he cared for her enough to choose it anyway.
Harry, I think, is floundering. I think he is completely and utterly lost, doesn't know what to do, hoping maybe working things out with his dad might lead him back into a royal role and a royal life he probably really didn't want to give up in the first place, but Meghan convinced him to do it and he did it. And now he's just doesn't know what to do. As it turns out, he doesn't know actually how to live and work in the real world. And if you leave royal life, in some ways you are leaving a very protected bubble. And now that they're outside it, Harry's like, oh, I guess that protected bubble wasn't so bad after all. And Harry just looks ever more like a complete and utter joke in basically anything he does.
Things have shifted, and little by little, the curtain seems to be coming up. Just 4 words, but they were not coming from an anonymous gossip post, not from some random forum thread, and not from people online guessing in the dark. This came from a serious byline in a respected paper, and it was written with no obvious softening at all. Once that opening was there, others seemed to follow right behind it. In July, a whole panel of voices landed on the same 3 words, and none of them appeared to be nudged in that direction. They were talking about leading separate lives.
It does feel, Richard, in that climate, pretty despicable to use the children. So Harry, Meghan spare, for example, posting, although they won't be seen by anyone, of course, but the noise is what matters. The noise will camouflage Harry's recent disaster.
One person said the 2 of them had not been spotted together in quite a while. Another suggested there was now a real fracture in the relationship, and that they no longer seemed eager to be seen in public side by side. Then, when they finally appeared together at that gala, a presenter watching the moment even said she must be absolutely furious with her hopeless husband. That phrase, said out loud on television in the middle of the afternoon, and not one person in that studio seemed to blink. And that is what has shifted this summer. It is not just the hug, and it is not just the ring either. What changed is that people with real careers to protect have stopped whispering around it. The old claim that it was totally and utterly false simply does not land the same way anymore. And that is exactly why the reaction kept growing. Because once a story starts being discussed by both casual viewers and established commentators, it stops feeling like a one-off moment and starts feeling like part of a much bigger conversation. People were not just reacting to the public appearance itself, they were reading into what the silence around it might mean, and that made every new remark feel loaded. What kept this alive was the way different voices began echoing the same concerns from different angles, even if nobody was claiming to know the full truth. Some framed it as distance, some called it tension, and others simply pointed to the awkwardness that seemed to hang over every public appearance. That kind of commentary can be messy, but it also shows why the subject would not go away. So the pressure did not come from one clip alone. It came from the build-up, the repeated discussion, and the sense that the public was no longer willing to accept the polished version without asking harder questions.
I think with reference to this meeting, the Sussexes have a vested interest as well, you know, certainly commercially. They're not, he's not very bright, she's not very talented, so what have they got? They got the royal links. Now this is the ultimate, a meeting with the king and also introducing the king, of course, to a future generation. You can understand that. I mean, it's Archie and Lily, it's not their fault whether when William ascends the throne, their titles will remain is quite another matter, but then that's for the future.
This lady, this beautiful woman, saying that meeting Harry is a pinch me moment. Harry, you are the most loveliest soul. Meghan will hate that. Meghan will be hissing like a cat, like, she'll be absolutely furious.
The morning after that gala, a presenter said on television, what many viewers felt they had already figured out for themselves. She must be absolutely furious with her difficult husband. The phrase landed in the afternoon on a national channel, and nobody in that studio seemed to react. If that reaction is any clue, people are not just talking about a hug, no matter what the headlines focused on this week. The bigger issue, according to the way the moment was discussed, is the numbers behind it, and that is what some viewers believe would be hardest to ignore.
Harry has woken up and smelled the roses. And he's not happy because it's not roses he's smelling. He's smelling something bad. Poop.
A 31-year-old talent show winner reportedly got just 4 seconds of visible warmth from that man on camera, and British papers picked up the moment quickly. For Meghan, the public picture has spent 7 years being shaped into one package, one photograph, one storyline, one brand. In that version of things, her husband is not just presented as a husband in public, he is the asset, the piece of the image that nobody else in the world can simply go out and buy.
We always talk about how Meghan's like, they took my voice. Well, she's taking Harry's. She's taking his voice. She's taking, his freedoms away from him to do what he wants to do.
And on Friday, that same key part of the image appeared to drift off and hand attention to someone else right in front of a room full of phones. That is how one broadcaster, who has followed the pair for years, described it, and he did not soften a single word. He read that thank you post, the one that does not mention her name anywhere, and said it seemed to send only one message. "Get out of the way, sister. I am coming for your man." Then he added the line that kept getting repeated all week, saying the spare in his own relationship was trailing behind her through New York. That is why the discussion kept stretching beyond one awkward moment, because once people start reading every gesture as a signal, the whole appearance turns into a bigger story. Viewers were not only judging what was said on camera, they were looking at what was left unsaid, and that silence gave the commentary even more room to grow. Online, the reaction began to split into layers. Some people focused on the body language, others pointed to the way the public image has been managed for years, and a few commentators suggested the real tension was not about one greeting at all, but about what it seemed to represent. None of that has been officially confirmed, of course, but that did not stop the conversation from taking on a life of its own. And once a moment gets framed that way, every small detail starts carrying extra weight. A brief exchange, a passing remark, even the tone of a thank you can suddenly be treated like evidence by people who are already looking for a pattern. That is exactly what made this story stick, because the audience was no longer reacting to a single clip, they were reacting to the picture they thought it painted.
I knew Meghan for a bit before she met Harry. Did exactly the same to me, She did that to many people that she knew, that she'd either worked with or was friends with or whatever. It just seems to me she's what I would call a ruthless social climber, who just when people are no longer appropriate parts of her circle, they have to be expunged quickly so she can move on up the ladder.
Absolutely.
A cameo on her own program reportedly reduced him to one tiny line, praising her and leaving out even the full name. At that point, some viewers felt he was not really being referred to as a person anymore, just a single letter. My husband H, with only 5 letters left hanging in the air, and she still did not say them all. One image keeps coming back in the discussion, her inside filming with her close friend, while he stays outside the window, waiting and joking around by himself, like the court entertainer. To some viewers, that one frame says everything about the marriage.
Arrogance and entitlement, try to shift the blame because he can't take responsibility for anything. So of course he has to counter it with, the palace doing something. And of course they're not doing anything. I mean, Harry is the one who's been the proven liar here, who has completely, shown his hand and, what he is about. So, Harry and Meghan, I think at this point, are having so many problems behind the scenes, Dan.
One of them is treated like the main event, while the other is left carrying the coat. For people who have followed that family closely, none of this has come as a surprise. A biographer who has tracked them for years told a large American audience back in May that, in his view, the mood in Britain was that this marriage might not go the distance. Then a television host pushed the conversation even further and even put a rough timeline on it. Back in England, inside 2 years, divorced, tail between his legs,
Do you think your sister, Meghan Markle, has ruined Prince Harry?
The answer is yes. I mean, every single interview, every single picture, every place they go, Meghan grabs him. Meghan controls him. Meghan tells him no. Meghan stands in front of him. She controls every single situation like she is the star. And she's turned Prince Harry into a man of non-substance, for her own well-being.
An author who has written 2 full books about that family said back in the spring that the 2 of them seemed to be at an unfortunate crossroads, with their paths apparently drifting in different directions. Then, in July, a whole panel landed on the same 3 words without anyone feeding them the answer, calling it leading separate lives. And the woman who has been around that family for 40 years said she had told him months earlier that he would be wise to get out while the window was still just about open. None of that crowd was saying this in 2022. Make of it what you will. And that is the part people keep circling back to, because once a public moment gets turned into a symbol, the conversation stops being about one clip and starts becoming about the entire image around it. Supporters push back on the harsher takes, critics keep reading deeper into the same footage, and the claims remain unverified either way. But online discussion does not wait for confirmation. It fills in the gaps on its own. That is why the tone around this has stayed so fixed on distance, timing, and who seems to be standing where. Every small appearance gets folded into a larger narrative, and every new comment gets measured against the last one. Even people who are only half paying attention can feel how fast that kind of story grows once it catches on. So the debate is no longer just about a carpet moment or a brief exchange. It is about the meaning viewers keep assigning to it. And that is exactly why this conversation keeps moving, even when nobody involved is saying much at all.
I have never seen much contrition from the Sussexes. I don't think they fully understand or appreciate what the word means. Look at Meghan, for example. I mean, she's the most trolled person in the world, we hear. And, of course, the lies they spread about the royal family, for example, and famously on Oprah, then, of course, in the Netflix series, and, of course, Harry's memoir Spare was a bizarre feat.
There is one part of Friday that keeps coming back to mind, and it is not the hug. It is that arm. She was standing on someone else's carpet on the final night of his charity event, and she raised her arm to show him where to stand. He walked right past it, and she looked down before placing her hands behind her back. Then, about 2 hours later, a young person she had never met seemed to get the warmest response out of her husband that people have seen from him in 4 years.
I'm not afraid of Meghan Markle. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. Meghan Markle is a third-rate, shall we say, greaser and bully. I'm used to first-rate bullies. So she doesn't frighten me in the slightest. And if she tried anything on for size, I'd crush her the way an elephant crushes an ant. As for Harry, he can't sue me either.
She put that whole evening together, and still, it seemed to slip out of her hands before dessert was even served. He once stood on a stage and told the room to brush off the divorce chatter, joking that the 2 of them had supposedly been divorced 10 or 12 times already, and the crowd laughed right along with him. That was December 2024, and at the time he could say it with a smile. Now people are talking about it like it is happening in real time, even though none of them has shown a single letter about it. Interesting, right? And what really sticks is that one arm nobody took, those 6 months with a bare finger, and the writer of his own biography saying outright that he is happier when his wife is not around him, according to the book's framing. Do you think that marriage makes it to Christmas? Next time, it is the ring nobody seems willing to price, where the new one came from, and why nobody will put a name to it. If this story has you reading between the lines, like, subscribe, share, and comment, and see you on the next one.